the students were very motivated if they had good teachers and good organizational system around them, good schools, good leadership, to crack on questions like how many millions of Reichmark could the government save if we eliminated so and so many disabled, homosexuals, diseased, and so on. And the students were great. I mean, they did great on the exams, so we could celebrate, you know, yoo-hoo, that's a great system. I mean, it's a very drastic example, but I think there have to be two wings. In Estonia, and I'm sure in the States, in all over the world, we have to ask also the question, what is education? Why is this organization set up?
Which brings us back again to the clear vision point. I really think it is about, you can build a team and that needs to happen and foster sharing among teachers, but if you don't have a clear vision of, you know, where you want your kids to be, which is the same question as to you, what is education? Like, to have kids who are where you want them to be by the time they're leaving your school, like, you have to come to that clear vision. And I think the most fundamental difference between these schools that I would call transformational that I've seen and other schools is that they are on a mission to get somewhere. And a lot of other schools in the US, I'll just say, exist to put learning opportunities in front of kids. Not to move kids from one point to another. And I think once you have a mission, then you go about accomplishing it in the same way that you try to accomplish any end goal. You know, you build a really strong team and build a really strong culture and manage effectively, and then do whatever it takes to get there, which means not taking other constraints as a given, like not in the US low-income context, not taking the school day as a given and figuring out how do we lengthen it, you know, how do we get more time with our kids, or whatever it takes.
If you ask the question what to do with a school where you have great teaching and learning and not that great leadership. The parallel would be here to NBA or NHL, where you have stars and you have a goal or vision. Without it, nothing happens. And then you've got to make a team leader, whether that be the head or deputy or whoever. And you've got to build the strategy together, what to do. And every single member should understand that if they are not going to do their bit, even if they do not like it, but for the achievement of that vision or aim, it's necessary, then that's not going to work. In other words, you've got to have great leadership. And I believe that every teacher should have leadership as part of their studies, either in the teacher training college or university. Without those skills, you won't be able to empower the students. You won't be able to lead the class, to achieve teamwork, cooperation. And the second thing is that if the teachers are not working together, then how can they teach the students to work together? It's not a theory, it's everything should be in practice. We can all read how it should be done, but unless we do it, we learn how it really works.
Yeah. I think there is so many theory, what we know, everybody knows, because we have teached. And one of them is about cooperation. Everybody knows it's very important, but if we are looking what we are using, do we walk what we are talking, then there is so many difference between. I don't know how about you, but if I would like to ask from myself, how many times I was I forgot the word. Just a simple one. Hinne. Mark. Thank you. How many times I have got the mark because I made or I did or I didn't do cooperation during my 12 years in the school. And how many times I got this mark just because I did do something.
So that is definitely an issue that teachers should reward cooperation in a classroom. Teachers, it's quite simple to do vocabulary tests and make sure you get them all marked in 10 minutes and so on. But it's a bit more difficult to give a mark for cooperation. Furthermore, I think I, as a teacher, I think that this is one of the hardest things to explain to students in Estonia. Like, it's not something solid, it's not a percentage. You give them a mark for something that is very hard to quantify. Any ideas on this? Or what Aivar just said, it was just my
we are talking about values.
Yeah.
What are we value?
Yeah.
It's a mark. Are we giving a mark for cooperation really? Or just you have a pen, okay, you have a mark.
I mean, I think, so I completely agree with that, and I think it's really got to the question about you know, the marker is like what's the purpose of education, and I think in Estonia today it's still very much around, you know, knowledge and understanding, but there's all these other important things that are really important, I think, for students to be successful in today's world. You know, like you said, it's about collaborating with other people in a team. Like if you have a conflict with someone on your team, like how do you solve that? How do you work together? How do you think? How do you develop your creativity, your initiative, empathy? And when you hear just stories about world news today, I mean, some of it can be very depressing, and so, you know, really thinking about like what are our schools doing to, you know, to make the world better and make sure that people will be able to like live together in multicultural and, you know, in a more globalized world. So I think we do need to rethink about the sort of the core purpose, and I don't think there's necessarily a big conflict between the different things, like for example like academic achievement and these other important things. I think they can go hand in hand really, really well. Yeah, and then I think to your question about schools, I mean, I think the other thing I would add there, I think the vision and the culture is super important. The other thing I would just add, I think, is around capacity. I mean, they're not the teachers there. Really just like supporting and empowering teachers to get better every day at what they do. And I think the two things, at least in my work at Teach For All, that we've seen have been very effective is it, one, you know, giving teachers the opportunity to see some really good teachers, like how they teach, and just learn from the best and see what's possible. And then the other is have a system for giving that, so they get like adequate critical feedback that will help them to get better every day. So I think we do have to look at schools. It is a lot like a capacity issue as well. Just how do we help schools build their capacity to get better every day?
I think it's lots about role models again. For instance, we have a big issue at our school. I'm quite sure in other schools in Estonia as well, that when we look at the comments the students get, perhaps it's different at your school, I don't know. But at our school, you have hundreds of comments piling up throughout the year, and almost 99% of them are negative. You forgot to do this, you didn't do that. It's kind of what you mentioned, right? What you shouldn't do, what you didn't do right. Then now the question is how to improve on that, how to make a change. Whip and a carrot. So the director of our school, he said, from now on, if you want to write a negative comment, he said that to the teachers, at a meeting. He said, you have to write for every negative comment, you have to write 5 positive comments. I'm going to check on you. Okay, so that's the whip. He's a very macho guy, so you don't want to get, you know, him angry. But you also have to have the carrot, and the carrot is, we're planning to do that. We're planning to have a sort of a notice board in our staff room, where teachers can start to write positive comments to each other, just to encourage this culture of noticing good things and applauding, saying, you know, you did a great thing today. It starts from us, it starts from ourselves.
Yeah, in every system you get what you measure, or the way you measure. It seems to me that we teach for marks because the marks or grades are important to get into university or into further education establishment. We do not measure the added value the young person has gained during the period of studies in one or the other school. We do not measure the level of empathy, because the tests or the exams measure different things. We need to change the paradigm about curricula. As long as we want to have the skills, the young person knowing the personal learning styles, different teaching styles, what she is best at, it should be fostered and brought about and backed up by the curriculum. Today we have a subject-based curriculum. In innovative schools in New York, I visited quite recently one, they do not have subject-based curriculum. They have, for example, code systems, which integrated English and mathematics. In Singapore, which is brought as an example to the world, they go to school to learn. And they are in school from a certain period of time, ending up somewhere in the afternoon. They do not go to subject lessons. They go there to learn. And they do many things, from IT to singing, from physical education to mathematics, the natural way. They develop their skills in a very natural way. It does not mean that they won't be able to go to top universities. But it does mean that they will be willing to do the thing because the motivation is there. If the teacher pushes you to learn, it's the teacher's responsibility to be responsible for the results. Hence the reference to all sorts of league tables. If it is my responsibility and I would like to do that, I am responsible for them, and most probably my results will be much better if this is my aim, my goal, my mission, and I would like to do that. And that's the challenge for people in education today and tomorrow. How to get to this point that this is my responsibility and I'm happy with it.
See, and that, yes. I mean, that sort of brings us to the question, I think, you know, of, okay, so, you know, how do we foster the development of many truly excellent schools? And I don't know, what I've been sitting here thinking about is just, you know, Artur has filled me in on sort of the latest PISA results, and I think Estonia is maybe 1 point out of hundreds of possible points ahead of the US. So this tells me that it may not be as, I mean, I came here thinking I'm going to see like the excellence, you know, I mean, I've been hearing that this is, but if you're only a point higher than the US, then I feel like, okay, there's some commonality here between our experiences. And I just think, so I do think there's probably a question of how do you go from good to great? And, I think that understanding the answer to that question probably has to do with really grounding ourselves in the lessons of what is happening and what he's describing is happening in schools that really are great. And always there is a school leader who feels full ownership over getting to this vision, and so, and yet we have a policy set up in almost every country, and from what I hear here too, that is all about sort of protecting kids by micromanaging our educators, and so we actually might start with educators who are all about the kids, but quickly they become all about like checking the boxes, it's like a compliance culture. And I think the question is, if we want to get from good to great, is about, okay, how do we shift the policy context so that our work is about attracting and developing and empowering and holding accountable, our schools to get great results. Like, how do we, I just read a study that looked at how systems across the world have moved from good to great, and that was basically the insight. You've got to move from a compliance culture to one rooted in, accountability and empowerment of educators. I think there are lessons there too. I mean, to me, it tells me that we need leaders in the system and in policy and in our businesses who are calling for those kind of changes, and so it's about leadership at every level. Ultimately we need transformational leadership if we're going to affect the kinds of meaningful changes we need, to really get where we're trying to go. And we need it not only in classrooms and schools, but at every level of the system and at every level of policy, and from those folks who are influencing policy as well.
I'm very glad that we got to this point naturally, because this is the third point of our agenda today, how to get this success we've had in schools onto the state level, to the national education system. Of course, we would like to have teachers who have great ideas end up in high places where they can make policy decisions, but are there any other ideas, or how does this take place today? How do policymakers hear the ideas of schools, head teachers, and parents? Does this happen in Estonia?
Most probably it does, but I would still like to go on with the initial question about the systems. The PISA and OECD reports have pointed out one thing, that there is a great correlation between good results at PISA and school autonomy. Autonomy means that there is trust. Trust in the leadership, trust in the teachers, trust in the parents and the pupils. And those schools, if we take Estonia, then most probably, I don't have the data, so I'm speculating, but there might be a linkage where there is less autonomy on the local government level, because there in the community might be only one school. And that might be very tightly connected to the local community government. And their autonomy is not autonomy in its true sense on the word and the concept. So what we need is definitely autonomy, so that what you are going to do in the classroom is accepted by the leadership, but it's driven by the vision and mission why we are doing this. That's one thing. And the second thing, there is no place, and this is a very strong feeling of mine, for mediocrity in education, and especially in schools. Only the best should be and have the chance to become teachers, because only the best can educate and make sure that the next generation is going to be better. Not the best shouldn't go to study law and business, sorry if I'm interfering with other spheres of life, but only the best should be in the school. They can create the framework for the next generation of talent and leaders to pair.
The question that, thinking where Estonia and our school system is right now, I think the question is, what is going to be the impetus for change. When we think about the conversation, I think that we have about our education is that, you know, it's so easy to refer to getting you know, good results in PISA. So compared to, you know, most countries in Europe and most countries in the world, our education system is actually good, and I think that's right. On average, it is good. But the question is, like, what's really gonna push us to actually want to get much better and get to a point where we're giving every single child in this country a great education? Because I think right now we know that, like, we're just not doing that. And failing kids isn't happening on the scale that it's happening in many other countries in the world. So we're doing good, but we should be doing much better. So really celebrate, I think, where we are, and then think, okay, how can we get better every day? And one of the things, I mean, I've just really loved before, like when we've had some of the Noored Kooli events, is that when our participants and alumni who work in school, when they just share some of the stories about their grade specific kids and like the challenges that they have, and then why this is so important, like to get more momentum. I don't know, like if either Marko or Martin, if you want to share sort of towards the end of the panel, just one small story about one of the students that you have. I think it would just be a great thing for I think all of us to like be truly grounded into like why this is so important that we get better every day with our school system. I don't want to put you on the spot, but like.
You know what, let me give you 2 seconds to think about that question and say one thing, just because I can't not say it. I think there are probably many things we can do today, as to your question, to move things in the right direction. But the longer we defer making a serious effort at getting this country's truly most promising future leaders, as many of them as you can get, to channel their energy into classrooms, invest in them so that they are successful with their kids, learn the lessons of success, and then invest in their ongoing leadership so that they can build the capacity of the system and make the system level changes. The longer you defer that day, the longer you defer the kind of truly meaningful change you want. I am so deeply convinced of that. And the reason I'm convinced of it is that I've watched 20 years of billions of dollars of philanthropic investment in improving education in the US, of one elected official after another saying they're going to make it happen. And then I look in communities on the ground at what's really changing things, and without the army of people out there working at every level who have the grounding and the conviction and the determination that comes more often than, I mean, just like almost always from having taught successfully, you don't make the kind of progress you need because you've got people lurching after one silver bullet solution after another, just ungrounded. So I just, of course, this is kind of my life's work. I deeply believe in this theory of change, but it's just because of the evidence I've seen over time that I've come to that kind of deep belief. So I think what you're doing at Noored Kooli, all to say, is like exactly what we need, and we need to make sure that Noored Kooli gets much bigger and in a small context, I realize, and much better over time as well.
So, Marko, did you have a chance to think of a student?
I have many students.
Is that it? When Artur posed this question, immediately I thought of one young kid who was the saddest to see me go from school, because this is, if I had to choose one of the best things I achieved in school, it was that young boy who wasn't very good at English. He was quite not good, actually. But I got him in the 5th grade and he didn't speak at all. And it's not because he couldn't say a word. I'm sure he knew a couple of words like apple and dog. But because of that small sticker on my speaker, positive reinforcement, I got him to speak after a couple of months, like 3 or 4 maybe. So I believe that doing this on a small scale level absolutely works, but my idea is that one teacher does this in the classroom. How do we translate this to the whole level and the mentality? Because one of the reasons why I left school was I didn't feel that my ideas or this mentality was actually taking its roots in the school or changing the school. That was the case for me anyway. So if we're talking about getting those ideas, right now we're having a discussion. I love the discussion. I'm sure everyone's got many good ideas. But how do we get these ideas out? How do we get policymakers to actually change them? We have media coverage, okay, but we need to do this on a regular basis. We're not going to have a conference every year and invite, every day and invite media. We need to do this all the time. Parents, teachers, schools.
One suggestion here would be a round table. Bring Noored Kooli ministries, people from different ministries, school heads, teachers around the table, and have an open discussion. What you have noticed, what your success stories have been, what would make the program better, what would make the school settings better, what to do to get a breakthrough in different changes of our mindsetting, values, paradigms. Although that's one practical thing which can be done, and I'm sure you can. The movement or the Noored Kooli movement can find also people who would come and back up the whole initiative.
Absolutely. That actually sounds quite simple and reasonable, and it's a bit strange that this hasn't been done. It seems to me that the policymakers are still very distant from actual teachers and headmasters in schools and parents. So
we met with your president today, and we suggested that he spend some time with the Noored Kooli participants to hear the ground level view, but maybe we could broaden that into a full panel. He didn't quite agree, but maybe a follow-up.
Okay, as I see our time is up here, I would like to thank everyone for participating, and Kaida has small gifts for you, and I would also like to thank the audience. I will address you as soon as Kaida has given our small gifts to Aivar. Toomas Kruusimägi. Artur Taevere. Marko Ringo. And Wendy Kopp. So I'm very glad you could make it all here, and I'm very thankful for the good discussion. Now, before you, I urge you not to leave, because there's a small reception with small drinks and snacks where you can continue this discussion, because an hour is definitely not enough for this large topic. And I invite you all upstairs to the second floor, continue the discussion amongst yourselves, and with the panelists I will join you as well. I hope to see you there. So, thank you everyone.
Välja lülitama.